Today, we will discuss something.
Self-love is difficult. It comes easy for a lot of people, but for others it's something that's very hard to grasp. I know a lot of people personally who struggle in ways to find self-love and struggle in ways to overcome the hatred they bear for themselves. And it's not something you're born with, although it does come easy for a lot of certain personality type. Self-love is something that needs to be injected into oneself. Self-love isn't a mindless ego nor a mindless love for who you are. Self-love is recognizing where you stand when facing the world and being okay with that. It's deeper than just loving yourself. It's accepting where you are and where you're going and knowing where to go to get to where you want to be. And it's impossible to do alone. I'm no therapist, and none of what I'm saying in this video is professional mental advice, but I would appreciate if you did hear about what I have to say. There's a misconception sometimes when it comes to self-love. It's not exactly narcissism, nor is it really having an ego. Self-love is a lot about acceptance and indifference to who you are in the world. There was a comment on one of my community posts asking about self-love, where someone had commented that self-love is narcissistic, in which my response was simply just not inherently. While it's true that untamed self-love can become brash and annoying, I feel as though self-love strives deeper than just a mindless, love for oneself. It's a lot more about accepting yourself, and it's telling yourself, I'm not perfect, and being okay with that, because it's very likely that you're not perfect, and it's important to balance self-love with ego. Ego is a whole other can of worms, and when talking about self-love, it's good to reflect on experiences and how they've changed who you are, and a lot of people don't do that for themselves. They don't think about how much they've grown or how much they've changed and based on the experiences around them and the way they perceive things. And more often than not, these changes strive from other humans, interactions with other living, breathing people. Many studies, so many experiences, and especially now, show that socialization and communication is necessary to survival. It always has been. Social relationships are a key component in mental health, whether some people wish to accept that or not. Failure in social relationships result in sadness. Failure to even have social relationships will simply boil up into loneliness and desperation. Social media was invented because people wanted an easier way to be social. That's just the matter of it. The desire is almost instinctual. Maybe it's not actually, instinctual, but it's very vital to most people's state of well-being. Just like having a job. Even just having something to wake up to, or wake up for in the morning every day, Some friend to talk to, somebody to look forward to hanging out with. Self-love isn't about unconditionally loving yourself, although it's more preferable over the opposite. It's about understanding that the way things are is okay. And that's especially important with social relationships. And you have the capability of changing your perspective on it. And the best way to uplift yourself is by using others and not being afraid to step forward a little more than you're used to. People can have a lack of self-love for a variety of possible reasons. Bad family life, bad social life, some horrific brain chemistry issues, mental handicaps, low self-esteem, or some combination of all of these. A lot of the time, a lack of self-love strives a lot deeper than just a simple lack of acceptance for yourself. Self-love is often paired with a lot of other lonesome, depressive emotions. Longing, depression, some sort of emotion that makes them feel as though they don't fit where they are. People who think that they're bad people, individuals who think that they can't get better, or that everything they touch burns into pieces. And oftentimes this can happen. Sometimes things will break by accident. Sometimes you're clumsy. Sometimes you cause them to break more often than most people do. I see a lot of the younger youth in this endless cycle of feeling wanted by somewhere or somebody, when in reality, they just want to be wanted, because it's very hard for humans to motivate themselves nowadays, especially because of COVID. There are a lot of strong-willed people that can do that, who can sit around, be alone, and just work. There's people in the armed forces that find purpose every day in serving something bigger than themselves. And for a lot of those who aren't brave enough, like myself, the general population, people who aren't brave to make this type of sacrifice for their country and who they want to serve, they have to find purpose in some normal, mundane aspects of life. They're young, lost, especially as they become young adults. Some can feel like they're not doing much with their life, and really the truth is it might feel that way for some time, because you're not going to be doing much. It's okay to acknowledge that, but don't dwell on that. One of the main defining factors of a lack of self-love is the elephant in the room, depression. Depression has so many angles to it, it's really hard to understand how to approach it from person to person. However, in my opinion, depression is one of those demons that definitely can go away if it's treated correctly. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do that. That's the issue. And it's not something that will just go away forever or just disappear. It's always going to be there. It's just the way that you cope and handle with that. The most broadest definition of depression, from me, strives from opening your eyes in the morning and not having that motivation to get out of bed. Having no humane desire to wake up, to move, to perform any daily function. It's this constant plateau of sadness that hardly reaches a normal state of thinking. And a lot of honest-to-God clinical depression is very, very hard to properly handle and treat amongst people. Depression on a whole on YouTube is handled pretty poorly by those who don't fully understand it. Keemstar back in the day described depressive people as just lazy, and if they'd stop being lazy, then they'd be happier. No, it's not that simple. Laziness is a symptom of depression. It's an onslaught of something that depression causes. It's not that being lazy causes depression. It's not as simple as, oh, just don't be lazy, when the actual fucking reason they're lazy is because of their condition. It's like telling an autistic kid, oh, just stop being so obsessed with this particular thing and you'll be fine. Or telling someone with OCD, dude, just, do something else. It's not that hard. 2 years ago, I wanted to do a video all about depression after I released my ADHD video. Since so many people were moved by that ADHD video, I decided to interview a lot of people suffering from the diagnosis. And my only real requirement was that you had to be diagnosed by a clinical practitioner. I eventually dropped the subject because I was afraid I'd share false and malicious, uninformed information. My mental health is typically sound most of the time. I'm not depressive by any means of the word. However, there are times where I can feel that emotion of depression, because depression at the core is an emotion. Clinical depression at the core is the lack of losing that emotion. Around 2019 or 2018, I don't remember the exact dates, I dated a severely depressed person, and I was introduced firsthand to the terrors and horrors that can come behind real clinical depression. And all the pain that he felt, I could feel with him. And I would try to help him with it. I would do my best to push him through it. But in the end, we weren't enough for each other. It was a long-distance relationship, and, we fell apart for our own personal reasons. I won't get into it. Long distance is difficult, and everything's private. But that year, I learned so much about people like that. I learned so much about people and what not to do to people like him. And I learned some of the things that I did to him was genuinely, not good for him. We're still amazing friends to this day. We didn't separate on super harsh terms. We didn't burn bridges. He is still one of my closest friends to this day. And his mental state is doing miles better ever since he met his new partner, which is great for him. And although I think my main point is, even though depression isn't something very easy to broadly speak on, a lot of advice that I'm going to speak in this video can be taken to heart by them regardless. I've always seen depression as something that can be wrestled over, something that you'll be stuck with all your life, something that will overpower you, but something that you can learn to suppress, to push behind you, and recognize. What is self-love? Self-love is motivation. Self-love is less about yourself and more about just being okay with things. It's looking at the positives. Self-love comes with joy. Self-love comes and requires other people to validate that, because humans are social creatures, and in order to love yourself, you need to know that others have that capability as well. There are 7 billion people on this earth. The probability that every single one of them will not give you the time of day to care about you is so infinitely small, we will just say it's impossible. The probability that one of those 7 billion people won't care about you is likely a lot higher, but that's just the nature of the world. Not everybody's gonna get along, and not everybody's going to understand one another. And it's up to you to understand that, because just because one person doesn't want to give you that time of day and doesn't take the time to understand you, doesn't mean the person standing 2 feet from them will do the same. Even if that's someone you've spent a long time making a relationship with, even if that person's been with you for a lot of their life, if they don't understand you, after putting so much work and effort into helping them try, then maybe it's okay to find somebody else. Because you can't love yourself alone. You can make sure you surround yourself with people that will love you. And to me, that's a very powerful form of self-love, because you know you deserve someone like that. It's realizing just because someone doesn't like you, their emotions influence that opinion as well. They don't like how you are, hey, maybe it's because they can't get along with someone like you. And sometimes the things they don't like you is something you might be self-conscious about, and that's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot. But it's good to recognize that and just move past it and try to do something about it. And that's the biggest part about self-love to me. Understanding relationships, social relationships, and understanding yourself in a relationship. Humans influence how you feel about yourself. It's important to know which feelings are okay to keep around and which feelings are okay to let go. Other people can ruin you, but building your walls back up stronger is part of understanding why. There's something about relationships a lot of people I've met don't understand sometimes, and it's that people will come and go, and that's a lesson to take away from friendship, relationships, anything of the sort. Having these types of relationships will grow your character. Even if that relationship fails, you will take away something from that relationship. Whether it lingers or fades away or blows up and burns down, you will change as a person from it. And understanding where you've changed and how you've moved on as a human being is very important to self-love as well. It's vital to self-preservation. Knowing why it failed and why it began in the first place and reflecting on everything that happened in between, it's understanding but not being anguished by that. Maybe you wish things went differently. Maybe you want to go back and change what had happened. Those feelings are okay. They're natural. These feelings are normal. Save that for later and apply it to the future. It's not good to dwell on that. The way I taught myself to love myself is by watching how my relationships come and go and understanding why they ended up where they were at, and keeping that to myself. And if there's things in that relationship I had wished that I had changed, then I'll make sure I don't make those mistakes with anyone else. And I leave it in the past, and whatever those people think of me now won't matter because who I was to them will be different later in the future. I can recognize the mistakes that I've made. Because humans are capable of changing. Hating yourself because of what you've done and who you think you are can't do much for yourself unless you try to change that. Promise yourself you'll do better. Promise to other people you'll do better, and then follow up on that. Don't let your mistakes define you. A lot of people think that they need romantic relationships to be happy, when that's far from the truth. You really just need someone that cares about you, and sometimes that can be a romantic relationship, but it can also be a good friend that can love you unconditionally. It can be a family member that loves you. Someone can be there to uplift you, even in the smallest ways possible. In biology, back in middle school, we were taught about, the different types of animal relationships. The mutualistic, the communalistic, or the commensalistic, I don't fucking remember or the parasitic. And the scope of ideas is laid out like this. Mutualistic relationships are where both organisms have a relationship and benefit from each other mutually. The commensalistic relationships, can't say the word, are when both organisms have a relationship where one of them benefits and the other is pretty much indifferent to the interaction. And a parasitic relationship is where one organism benefits at the expense of the other organism. Human relationships should be mutualistic. Don't sacrifice yourself for someone else. Don't put aside your self-care for someone else because you think it'll make things better. And a lot of the time, that won't make things better. Selfishness is okay. Selfishness balanced with selflessness and transparency can be a lot more powerful than just mindless selflessness, where you do nothing for yourself and end up pushing over for people. If people can recognize your motivations in life, and if you're clear about them, then a mutualistic relationship can form. If there's something about you that they like, there's something about them that you like, then a relationship can form. And the other parts of them that don't bother you and the parts of you that don't bother them are just on the side. You can benefit from one another. Trying to change who you are and to give yourself to somebody like that will make somebody unhappy. People should love each other for who they are and not for how much of themselves their partner gives up for them. And the same goes for friendships. Same goes for family. Same goes for everyone who cares about you and who you care about mutually. If somebody doesn't give you that rush of joy you need on that day, it's okay to just shut them out a bit. And if they get upset about that, then it's on them. And honestly, it means they just don't get it. And they don't have to. Ultimately, trying to balance your relationships successfully while also understanding the way things end is a way to become more accepting of where you are socially. So if you can build a strong friendship and a strong relationship with people just being yourself, then good. That'll be a strong relationship. But if it falls apart and breaks and crashes and burns, that's okay too, because that's normal. Understanding why it happened and where each person failed in their own ways and with their own personality, that's fine too, because some people just don't get along and some people just make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can't be fixed. And a lot of the times it's easier to let go than to try to fix something that's so broken that it will just leak more pain. Just surround yourself with people that make you happy, and then maybe they'll teach you how to love yourself more. I'll leave you guys with a word of advice from my ex, the one that I spoke about earlier, and about their struggles with clinical depression, ADHD, borderline personality disorder, other specified dissociative disorder, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Those 5 disorders they've been dealing with and diagnosed with for as long as they can remember. It's rough. Like, even now, it's very difficult to self-motivate. Part of that is also probably because of my ADHD, but at the moment, I just get out of bed because I've slept as much as I can, or because I'm thirsty as fuck and I feel horrible, or because I have to pee like right now. I just try and talk to people every day still. It's hard to do hobbies most of the time, but it's really important to have a support system of some sort. Even if all you do is send them some really dumb memes or talk about snails or something. It's a lot worse when you're alone or in a toxic/dangerous environment. Not everyone can get out of situations like that as fast as they want, unfortunately. CPS and the law in general are kind of shit with getting people out of it in the first place, and won't necessarily put people somewhere better. But a really cool thing is that like we have the science and information on how to handle these things, how to identify them, how these situations start, etc. We just aren't applying them nearly as much as we should, and it can be really difficult to get help when really as a society, we can be making it so much easier. If you're struggling, like, speak up. Like, make sure you're in a safe environment to do so. But so many people are in these situations and nobody realizes it. The more people talk about their experiences, the more information we get on the topic, and the more people can help. As people are more aware, it gets less stigmatized. And the more people we actually have aware of people being in bad situations, the more likely people will actually want to do something about it. It's really difficult for me, and I'll get confused sometimes about why I'm struggling in X or Z area, only to remember it's because of whichever of my 5 mental disorders. But I have a boyfriend that's patient with me. I have a family that understands most of the time. Friends in similar situations. I act weird and dysfunctional because I am, and I try to be open about them, about why I'm doing whatever it is that they're frustrated with me about. It can be very frustrating for both parties, but if I didn't communicate why I'm doing whatever it is it would make it a lot more difficult for them to understand exactly what I'm going through and how to help me in this situation. If I didn't start talking to them about what I'm going through, they wouldn't have set me up for therapy appointments. I wouldn't be working on getting disability. If you have behaviors you don't understand or are difficult for you, talk to a professional or even Google it. The internet has direct access to education on behavior modification, cognitive therapy, how trauma affects the brain, as long as you avoid, fallacious sources, which I also agree with, which are all so useful in helping yourself and others understand why you're going through what you are and how it works. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy also has a lot of self-help articles and books that you can do all your own if you don't have access to professionals. Self-love is about understanding yourself, and if you can understand yourself, you can understand how to make yourself something that you want to love a lot more.